feel like basically at this point I just have a YouTube channel to just sort of admit publicly to people classic films that I've never seen and I'm catching up on, even though I'm blind. And I'm doing it anyway. So yeah, this one actually has audio description on Paramount Plus and some other services, but I watched it on Paramount Plus. So there you go. I am John Stark, Mac the Movie Guy, and this is my review of Breakfast at Tiffany's. Yep, this film's been around for my entire lifetime, plus, a bunch of years, over 20, I'll just say that, over 20 years since before I was born. So I finally got around to it. It's been on this earth long enough, and I was like, you know what? Today's the day. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna browse. Oh, there it is. Oh, it has audio description. We're going for it. Yeah, so I'm a blind film critic, and I've seen a lot of stills and imagery from Breakfast at Tiffany's. I knew nothing about the plot of the film, which is really interesting because I knew a lot about like the film. Like I knew Audrey Hepburn, her Oscar nomination. I knew that this was written by Truman Capote, which I just thought was so interesting because all the imagery that I ever saw from Breakfast at Tiffany's led me to believe that this was like a lighthearted romp. And I was like, wait, the guy who wrote In Cold Blood wrote this? Is there like a twist to this? Does she start killing people? Like, what goes on? What is this? And why does it have Truman Capote? Yeah, it was a interesting watch. It was an interesting film, and for its time, it's incredibly progressive. I mean, it did things. It had, just the concept that a woman had her own apartment in 1961, which was really hard because it was hard for unmarried women to have their own apartment. A lot of people wouldn't rent to women. You had to prove that you were, that you had a job. And Holly Golightly, I don't know if she can really prove that. Credit didn't even really open up to women until the 70s. I mean, this is before the whole women's rights movement. So Holly Golightly is like, she's like way out there in front. She's, this movie's progressive as shit, in a lot of ways, except one, and we'll get to that. Don't you worry. I'm fully aware, and I'm going to talk about it. But let me talk about why the movie's great first, before I talk about why. Yeah. Anyway, George Picard. I'm not super familiar with him as an actor, and I thought he did a really nice job in this film. It's really hard because I would say Audrey Hepburn is just so effervescent in the role of Holly, and the role just gives her so many places to go that it becomes really hard for Paul to stand out because he just kind of serves as her steady, like the constant in this thing. His emotional range is pretty limited compared to Holly's. And he's just drawn to this character, this vivacious, loving life character. And he's not really even drawn to her at first. He's just sort of is like, oh, there's this crazy girl. And the more he finds himself in her, like in her line of sight, he just finds himself more and more enamored with her and her choices and the way of her life, and I wish it was that simple of a romantic comedy because I really thought that's what it was, and it gets into like some really interesting things. It goes in really interesting places, and this film is from 1961, so don't look at me for spoilers, because if I say something and it's a spoiler, this movie is literally a college graduate older than I am. So I could have. That's how far. It's a generation older than I am. So spoilers don't exist. That's not a thing. No, oh, spoilers? No, it doesn't exist for a film that came out that long ago. Uh, I I wouldn't have minded if I knew the plot to this film ahead of time. I would have been like, oh, that's the plot, cool. But I didn't know the plot, and it didn't really change the film for me. I just was kind of surprised it wasn't a straight romantic comedy. I was taken aback by some of the things we didn't talk about. Like, there was a doctor who was obviously kind of older. I mean, he was definitely older than Audrey Hepburn. I didn't look up the actor's age, like, at the time of filming, uh, you know, Breakfast at Tiffany's, but the guy that comes in as Doc sounds a little Old Man Rivery to me. So Father Time coming on here. So I'm going to guess he's also a generation ahead. And the fact that he openly admits in his story to Paul, he's like, yeah, those are my first wife's kids. And like, okay, so he was grown up enough that he had a first wife and kids before he met Holly, and he can't understand why Holly doesn't want to come home. It's like, first of all, you had a child bride. She was 14. He openly admits to it. And this is the kind of thing that, like, in 1961, people were just like, yeah, 14? Cool. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, Paul doesn't even, like, he's not even like, wait, 14? Like, he doesn't even, nothing just catches him off guard. He's just like, uh-huh. Yep, keep telling the story. Everything seems normal now. I was like, oh, thank you, 1960s. 14 was a good age to get yourself a woman. When you already have kids. I mean, like, how old were the kids? He mentions that he has kids, so they couldn't possibly have been that much, I mean, she would have looked like a big sister. So, ridiculous. Anyway, and then he, like, chases her down to, and it's like, what? Come home, please. You gotta come home. It's like, why hasn't she divorced you? Can you not divorce her? Can somebody not step in and just, like, point out what was going on here and just, like, annul the marriage or something? She's way too polite to him. And then he tells her about her brother, Fred, and he's about to come back from the war. And I legitimately did not know we were going to kill off Fred. Didn't know that. I thought Fred was going to, like, move in and complicate things and be all like, you're making all these terrible life choices and I went off to war and blah, blah, blah. And that's also not what happened. We killed Fred in the war or something. I don't know. We got a telegram. Fred's dead. And she loses her shit, and the movie takes a serious turn, and then she becomes, like, caught up in, like, a drug running scandal, and I was like, what is this movie? This movie is so not what I thought it was going to be, and so not of the time period. It felt like it was trying to break down all of the barriers. Like, I think that's why it's such a classic, is because it feels so far ahead of the year in which it came out. But even with that, there are parts of it where you look back on it and you go, okay, so we need to have a talk. I know you were progressive for your time, but somebody should have been concerned vocally that he married a 14-year-old. That probably should have been a thing, because he definitely was not remotely close to 14 himself. Anyway, second thing, this is where we're going to start talking about the character that is killing this movie and is slowly getting this movie canceled. One of the reasons why I wanted to watch this film, because it may disappear like Gone with the Wind and Song of the South, is Mickey Rooney. What? And I know the director, Blake, has said he would recast that role if given the opportunity, but Mickey Rooney was all like, I've spent 40 years with Chinese people coming up to me telling me how funny I was. I didn't know there was anything wrong with it. Yeah, dude. I feel like I feel like by 1961 we knew that blackface was inappropriate, so we should have just assumed that yellowface was also inappropriate. You know, like we should just kind of like if we stop doing one, we don't go, oh, but it's cool because we can still do the other races. No, no, that's not what that means. The Blake Edwards and Mickey Rooney just totally, one of the two of them needed to know that. And when they were offering the role, somebody in the studio needed to stop and be like, wait a minute, you're casting Mickey Rooney as what? Um, Luckily, truth be told, and this is why I think we have to keep Breakfast at Tiffany's around. First of all, there's a lot about the time period where this film is progressive enough in a lot of its ideologies. There is a gay couple in this. They're in there for like a hot second, but there's two dudes kissing in a bathroom that they get walked in on, and then they like walk, and they're like, oh, never mind, and they walk off in a 1961 movie. What? Like, come on, that alone means we keep this film in film history. Like, we can have serious conversations. I'm all for that. I think we should have serious conversations about Mickey Rooney, but at the same time, there are other things that this movie clearly did that other people were not doing at the time. This was subversive, it was progressive, it was everything it was supposed to be, it wanted to be. And I think that's what Truman Capote was trying to get across. That's what brought him to write something like Breakfast at Tiffany's. Wasn't that he just wanted to write something fluffy and simple and fun. I saw all of the little ways he worked in all of these breaking stereotypes, all of these changing and moving the line, and I think that's really interesting. And had somebody had the courage to go find an Asian man and cast him in the Asian role, this film would like be legendary still today. Like, people would not be remotely afraid of talking about Breakfast at Tiffany's as being like near perfect. It's just Mickey Rooney's presence in the film, which is so limited. By the way, he just shows up as just an angry man every time. You could almost edit him out of this film. There's a couple scenes where other people react to him, like his angriness, but he really doesn't serve a lot of purpose. There's nothing about his Asianness that's even necessary, which is kind of the bizarre thing, that they decided to make the angry neighbor Asian in the first place, because he doesn't need to be. Like, he's not, that could have been anything. He doesn't even, when if you're in your house and you have an Amazon device, you want to know how irrelevant Mickey Rooney is if you haven't seen this film, or even if you have, ask her who's in the cast, and she won't say Mickey Rooney. If you have one of those devices, it's in the same room as me. That's why I can't say that name. Yeah, ask. And she's not going to say Mickey Rooney. So it's a very small role. It is an incredibly offensive role because you essentially are he's just very one note, and he's just angry and pervasively Asian, but he's white. It's a white actor doing yellow face. He's doing an Asian stereotype, and there have been lots of articles written about how the stereotype that he is doing is taken a little bit from a lot of the anti-Japanese war rhetoric from World War II. A lot of the stereotypes we were pushing during World War II. You can go back and look at Disney cartoons from World War II with these anti-Japanese stereotypes in them. And basically Mickey Rooney was like, yep, that's great, I'm going to do this. And people will love me for it. And I totally understand why this many years later we're looking back at this film going, no, But at the same time, there's so much in this film to go, yes. So it's a film that we just need to have a conversation about. I realize I'm a white man telling the Asians we need to have conversations about this film. But if you look at the film subjectively with all of the little points, hiding a film and pretending like it doesn't exist and trying to blacklist it doesn't really have the same effect as making people watch it and making people understand this is bad, this should not have happened, don't do this again. Instead of just telling people that something once existed and now we don't talk about it anymore. Sometimes you do have to actually point out the bad things about the film and say, well, this would be a great film, but unfortunately we have this, and this one thing is affecting the film from being perfect, because essentially that's how I felt about it. I loved everything about it, but I can't, it's a classic, I can't give it an A, because I live in an era where I can't give Mickey Rooney's performance. I have to, like, if that was in a film at any point in time, it never should have happened. We were already past the point. Like, I can't even excuse it on like well, everybody was doing blackface at that time, you know, like we had already stopped doing that kind of stuff. But at the same time, somebody was like, no, we can keep doing yellowface. It's cool. It was never cool. Like when you stop painting one color, you should just assume that you stop painting all of them, not just, you know, it wasn't just one thing. You move on from you move on from all of them. So I think even in 1961, I would argue they should have known better. So I thought the audio description for this was really good. Unfortunately, it also does not want to talk about the character. So you have to know what it is. You have to know that that's Mickey Rooney and he's a white guy playing an Asian character. If you don't know the history behind it, the audio description just describes it in a way that you would like any other movie. It's not going to point out the racist connotation behind the thing. That's not really what its job is. It might have been nice to point out, played by Mickey Rooney, just as a little, like, point out the fact that this character is, you know, Asian and Mickey Rooney, and I think some people would have drawn some made up, you know, they would have figured it out on their own, but maybe some people just don't know who Mickey Rooney is, and so it doesn't really work anymore. I don't know, but that would be maybe my only thing going forward, is if we're going to use this as a learning tool to talk about film and to talk about the things this film did right for its time period and also the things that this film did wrong for its time period, then we have to be able to acknowledge them. And we have an audio description that does not acknowledge that it's a white actor playing an Asian man. Not that the narrator has the job of telling the audience why it's bad, but I think a lot of people would just know that from the mention. Anyway, those are my thoughts that I have on this film. Not that anybody's going to watch this review, because I don't think anybody was perusing and like, oh my God, I want to watch a blind guy talk about Breakfast at Tiffany's for 20 minutes. This is exactly what I wanted from my day. I've been waiting for this my whole life. I don't think anybody's just searching in 2022 being like, I wonder if there are any new reviews of Breakfast at Tiffany's that have been done by a guy holding their iPhone. That would be super cool if there were. Oh, look, there's one. So, anyway, to the 2 or 3 of you that actually watched this review, thanks. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe for more of these shenanigans. But like I said, I really wish I could give Breakfast at Tiffany's an A. I love so much about it, but goddamn Mickey Rooney. I really cannot. I just like morally feel obligated I have to give this film at least an A-. This film has to be punished at least by 1 grade level. The representation of the existence of this character in the film. I am totally down for a a director's cut of this film, I believe he can be cut out. I really do. I really believe he could be removed from this film. I don't think his character is that relevant to the plot, to the story. Um, I just, I just don't. There are literally times where you could cut him out and just have the audio of somebody yelling, and you could re-record it with an Asian actor and just dub it back into the film. And it would be probably just as effective, and just call it, the director's cut, or the 2022 re-release. I don't know, something. But we could fix this film if we wanted to. We're just choosing not to. If he was the main character, the star of the film, I could totally understand. It's really hard to fix Song of the South. Like, it's a really hard. I hate that nobody can see that film, and we can't also show that to people, and we have to act, that Song of the South is, oh, there's this film. You're not allowed to see it because Disney's hiding it from you. So, but let me explain to you why this is problematic. It's a lot easier to show people why something is problematic so that way they can fully understand what this is within the context. Anyway, I'm surprised. This was not what I thought it was going to be. So I just thought it was going to be a fluffy romantic comedy, and it went elsewhere, and I loved it. I loved it for that, and I loved it for pushing boundaries in the good ways that it did. So let me know what you think in the comments. Please like and subscribe. My website is macthemovieguy.com. I also like to promote the audio description project, which is adp.acb.org. It's where you can look up and see what films have audio description and where you can watch them. And also the adna.org, where you can look up who the narrators are. Unfortunately, the narrator was not credited on this recording. So if you want to look it up, go look it up. And that is it from me today on Breakfast at Tiffany's.